Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very informative show coming right up with special guest Patricia Foreman, and she's here today to share with us her new book, A Tiny Home to Call Your Own. Now, Pat is a pharmacist, sustainable agricultural activist, local food advocate, and popular speaker. She was a Class A contractor in Virginia and co-owned the United States' first tiny home construction company. Pat has been featured in major national magazines, including Mother Earth News, Backyard Poultry, and BackHome Magazine. So let's welcome to the show, Pat Foreman.
Oh, well, thank you, Marianne. It's an honor to be on your show. You're doing a lot of good, I think, for our society with your show.
Oh, well, thank you. And you're doing a lot of good with your book. I mean, my goodness. I think this is something that people are very interested in right now.
Yeah, I think its time has come. What's interesting is I've been studying this for a long time, and what I realize is the demographics is what is driving the tiny house movement. And back in 1960, just about 75% of all people were married, those over 18. And now, fast forward about 50 years plus, we have about 45% of the population over 18 is single. And not only that, about 35 million households only have one person, whether they're single or not. So there's a lot of mismatched housing in our culture.
Well, and so how did you initially even become interested in tiny homes?
That's a bit of a long story, but I'll make it shorter. We were building a conservation subdivision in Virginia, and what we wanted to do was to make a small house community that was food self-sufficient. So we designed it so that there was half-acre lots but we had the 2-acre zoning. And we realized that we were getting inquiries about building tiny houses for other people. So we started America's first tiny house construction company. That was in the early 90s. But what we found is people would come, they'd say, oh, it's the answer to all my problems. I mean, my life will be great if I can just have a really upscale but decent small place to live. And then they ran into zoning. And if the zoning didn't disallow it, they ran into financing. And then that became a problem. So that literally put us out of business because people couldn't get the zoning or the financing to do the houses.
Why do you think there's such an attraction to this movement at this period of time?
I think there are so many forces that come into this. I think people, we're losing our middle class. So many people I know are working 2 jobs just to get by. The housing that is available is a little more expensive because it might be too much more than they really need. So they either go smaller or they take on housemates. And I think a lot of us, I think we're getting over some of the consumerism where enough is enough. I know I've dealt with stuff for so much, but and I'm just coming out of this phase of literally downsizing again and again and getting my stuff literally in order. So I think there's interest in living simpler lives, and quite frankly, the millenniums, I love them. I think they're great, but they're renters for the most part. They're delaying having a family, so they're not really looking for that standard 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 2-car garage, 2-bathroom house, the 1,200 to the 1,800 square feet. They're just looking to kind of get by and deal with their student loans and make it. And on the other hand of the generations, you've got the baby boomers that are retiring, and they're either widowed or single for whatever reason, and they don't really need the standard American house of 3 bedrooms, 2-bath, and 2-car garage.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at that, and I think there's also this big, huge movement towards people becoming just, living off grid, and I'd love for you to share with our listeners what that means, because I think a lot of times people live off grid. What's that,
Well, living off grid, and that's one of my goals, Marianne, is I would love to live off the grid. That literally means living off the electricity power plant and being independent, either with solar cells or water power, and using less energy, so your lifestyle becomes more sustainable to the whole planet as well as yourself. So that's living off the grid. sort of unplugged cottages in a way, and you can do it. We got to give up some of the creature comforts, but not all of them. You can still have refrigeration. You still have heating. You can use wood heat, for example, or a really good insulation, and that's where the green building movement really comes in so well. Where how there are a few buildings that are completely independent and living buildings. They're self-sufficient on their own without any other input. So I'm not sure if that answered living off the grid question or not, but
I think it did.
It is possible
because it really helps people to identify that, hey, if you can have a tiny home, let's say you're on a small piece of property, or maybe even a larger piece of property, and you have, you're able to use the sun to harness energy, and from either a creek, or maybe you're doing all these different things to just pretty much live off the land, as opposed to attached to, like how you're saying, the power plants and different things like that. So it's a much cleaner way of living.
Yes, cleaner and sustainable and healthier by far. What's interesting is having been in with the tiny house movement since the early 90s is we find that some people have already downsized. For example, we did sell one of tiny houses that was, by the way, it's knotty pine paneling. It had ceiling fans, a little kitchen, a bathroom, and it was 256 square feet. Just a charming little building. Had copper roofing even, so they can really be craftsman built. But what they downsized, and he was having an hour and a half commute to work. He was a stockbroker, and what Ray wanted was to just stay at home more, not have that long commute, and be able to focus. But his daughter was he couldn't resist his daughter, so he bought this little cabin. It was on a trailer, and he parked it in his backyard. And then what happened is he could just go and do his work as long as that door was closed. His daughter was not to bother him, so he literally had a commute that was walking across his backyard. And it was a total life changer for him and his wife, the whole thing. So there are a whole bunch of, I guess the point is, tiny houses, they have a place in our culture, not just specifically for living necessarily, but also for that extra maybe safety valve of space. In the book, there's about 16 different uses for tiny houses that people can use them, and one of them is just have your office, for example, or an extra guest room, student housing. We built one house for a lady that had a differently enabled son. This was in South Carolina. We were living there at the time, and so we built him a 500 square foot house. It was charming. Had a big deck to bring the outside in, so you could actually literally go outside and feel like you're still part of the house. Had a cathedral ceiling, so that solved the problem of having him nearby but not living with her. Mm-hmm. So a lot of different uses for tiny houses. She sheds, heath caves, couples who sometimes make better neighbors than housemates, even though they might still love each other. They just need their own space. So, hobbies.
Yeah, different things. Can tiny homes be built on either like so they can be portable or moved?
Oh, yes, absolutely. In fact, that's one of the tickets to getting around the zoning is as soon as you put it on any structure, put it on a foundation and call it a house, then it becomes a house. And that's subject then to all the zoning restrictions, the sizes, the limitations, the setbacks, all that. But if you put it on skids or a trailer, it comes under a whole different set. And don't call it a house. It becomes a whole different animal, I guess you'd say, or a whole different situation where you can move it around. And when we had our farm, we built several little cabins, tiny house cabins actually for our interns, and they were on skids. And so we had the interns place them throughout the season where they would get the most solar gain, the most permaculture kind of approach to house design, that sort of thing. And we actually had them do part of the building to gain some carpentry skills as well. So, and then I turned one of those little tiny houses into a sauna, remodeled it for that, and moved it up by my house when we closed our farm down.
Oh, well, hey, those are some great ideas. Now, now when we look at this, are there some things to consider when people are looking to design their own tiny home?
Well, we had our sort of pet set of building materials. that we researched and found that they did a really good job with. And some of those were the bamboo flooring and just bamboo wood, because bamboo, it's more dimensionally stable than maple and harder than oak, and yet it has this give to it because of all the little fibers that go through it, to give it some of the leg relief. So we use quite a bit of bamboo. We generally tended towards materials and furnishings that were not fuzzy, that could get dirty or collect dust, because it's kind of hard to clean some things when they're a little dusty, especially if you have pets, which I have. Another thing we tend to do was the knotty pine paneling, and with cathedral ceilings, because that gave you more of a feeling of spaciousness, and then the knotty pine would not crack when you moved it on a trailer. It had a little more of a give to it. And we always had ceiling fans that had lights, so it double served as a lighting as well as air movement, and then non-toxic finishes. So literally no off-gassing. A lot of people request us to build them a tiny house or a way house because they had allergies, and they wanted it specifically just to sleep in so they could get a good night's sleep. So we were really big on the hypoallergenic materials.
Now, can they choose different styles of homes, like maybe a New England style or a cabin?
Oh, you can build it any way you want, of course. And a tiny house or small house, that what we defined it as, usually, just size-wise, because you've got your big mansions, your 4,000 square feet and above. I'd mentioned before the typical house is around 1,200 to 2,000 square feet that has the 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage. And then what we're calling a tiny home, it could also be tiny/small home, is around 500 to 800 square feet. And then what we built the small tiny homes, but we also built the tiny home. The smallest one we built was 224 square feet. And so did that answer your question about design? Can be any. You can have a cottage. You could have it a whimsical, like a little castle. I mean, there's really no limits to the design you can do.
Well, that's pretty exciting. Then people can really kind of draw up what they're dreaming of, and then, and see if they can make that work within, the plans and whatever their budget is.
And what's nice about living smaller or tiny and building smaller is it's because you have less space, you can use better materials. For example, if you really wanted, which I still want to have a granite countertop, you can go ahead and afford it because it's not that much counter space that you're having to deal with. And the wood floors, besides being easy to clean, they look really, really nice. The other thing we did is we used the bamboo flooring and put it as a floating floor. So the part of it, meaning that it was secured at the edges, screwed down. I preferred the screws, but sometimes we use, and then that way, if a portion of it got wet or damaged, you could easily just pick up that section, replace it, and then put it down and secure it again. That's called floating floors.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's awesome. Now, do you feel like, do you get like do people ask you, it's like, hey, do we have to choose between being efficient and being comfortable if we're going to move to a tiny home?
Oh, you just hit the nail on the head, Marianne, with that question. One of the things you can't get away from in living in a tiny home is you have to deal with your stuff. There's just no way around it because, and I'm still dealing with my stuff. I realized, where's all this coming from? And I realized I had 7 different entities in my mother's estate and my stuff that I was sort of consolidating into 750 square feet. That's the living space I have now. And so, it's sorting through it, what's really meaningful to me, what really serves me instead of just bees. I've got a couple of pieces of art that I adore that I just make space for. So, and if you really want that big man chair, that's just your comfort zone and where you put out, then you design around it, but something else might have to give, like another rocker or something to make space for it. So you work with what your preferences are and what your desires are, and then and the other thing about tiny houses is make every inch count. And tiny doesn't mean it's closed in. In my house, I can sit in my office/bedroom multi-purpose rooms is really important too. And I can look clear through the house out to the backyard where I've got a flock of chickens in their little micro coop out there, and it's just really great. So it doesn't have to be that you're stuck in some little cubicle to live. It can be quite open.
And you just touched on something that I'd love to share, because a lot of people have pets. So what if someone has an 80-pound dog, and 3 cats? I mean, will everyone fit in a tiny home?
Well, I have 2 cats and a 40-pound dog, and we all get along fine. And, of course, I've got wood floors, so it's easy to clean those wood floors. And with an 80-pound dog, I think it could just serve as a heater. You get it panting, and if it's a well-insulated house, you can just live off the grid and have dog power after the heat. That's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but of course there's room for pets. And there's even pet furniture now for tiny houses. And what I've done in my house is under some of the main window seals is I just put 8-inch boards with a little ledge on it for the cats. And they literally spend a lot of time up there just looking out, sleeping. When I first got this puppy, I fed the cats up there. Now they can all eat on the floor. But yes, there certainly, in my opinion, are room for pets. And, whatever you love and is dear, keep it and cherish it.
So what are some of the things that people need to get used to if they're, moving into a tiny home?
What are some things that people need to get used to? Being uncluttered, I think, would be the very first thing, because in my house, if I leave something out somewhere that's not supposed to be, it looks cluttered, a messy desktop, whatever it is. So tidiness is I think primal, and although some people have a higher tolerance for clutter than others, but what's interesting with clutters is, the average person spends about 30 minutes a day looking for something. It might be the glasses, the keys, or what I do with that book, where's the newspaper. But I challenged that. I thought, that's an awful lot. I don't think I do that much. But when I really started to time up how much I spent just looking for that piece of the paper, the file, whatever, it was right about 30 minutes a day. And if you take that all out to the year, that's 7.5 weeks out of your year that you spend just looking for stuff. So that's where I think I know, it's like, so I'm making a major effort. I'm still working on myself and my clutter and my stuff. I'm not through with it yet, but I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. But I really realize that I don't want to spend time looking for things. So I have a place for my keys and a place for my glasses and a place for and systems set up to do that. So, and I keep my files up to date now, because I spent so much time, where was that thing I printed off, the document about whatever it was? And that has helped me to do and focus more on what I want to focus on rather than just looking for stuff. And that's, for me, that's one of the primary things to do.
Well, it seems like, once you get past all the clutter and really, kind of getting down to the things that you actually need, that makes it a little bit easier. But I'm sure people are like, well, I have to hold on to this, So it's...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, my parents grew up in the Depression era, and my mom was a very first-class organized hoarder. I mean, nothing, even a piece of string, would go to waste if someone could use it sometime in the future. But what I found is I've really given so much stuff to Goodwill and Habitat and consignment shops. I prided myself that I really didn't throw anything away that would go to the dumpster or go to the landfill. And what I realize is those are also repositories of things I might need. So if I need, say, a piece of roofing or a tool or whatever it is, chances are pretty good I can go there and buy it for pennies on the dollar instead of having to spend full price on it. So we're in an affluent society now. That our gross national product depends on how much people spend. And I think we need to get over that and ask ourselves how much is enough and what really serves me as well as our planet for me to live a happy, healthy, full life. And with stuff, there are so many consequences of stuff. I talk about that, devote a whole chapter in the book to stuffology. Page 119 has the Stuffology 101, and the consequences are there financial consequences because you have a bigger house, a bigger mortgage. The resale value of stuff is not much at all, if any, yard sales, and the money that you spent on stuff that you could have spent or paid down your mortgage or saved or spent on something else is gone. Social consequences of stuff. There have been times I've been too embarrassed to have my people over because my house was so cluttered. I'm embarrassed to say that, but it's like, oh, it's too much effort to clean up. We'll just go out. The health consequences of stuff. Dirty mold can form in corners with the good ventilation. Things on the floors. You have accidents. You open a cabinet and something falls on your head. That was my mother's thing. You couldn't open any cabinet without something falling out. And then,
getting you, right?
The frustration. Yeah. And then moving day.
Right. Yeah, that's got to be pretty tough. And you look at all this, and it's like, wow, I think it really helps to organize your life in a really easy way. And is that what some of the feedback you're hearing?
Oh, well, absolutely. Absolutely. In an easy, non-distracted way. So, yeah, and a lot of people that are both millennials as in our whole culture that are downsizing, and especially the senior citizens, they're going, what about my estate stuff? And I have a friend that wrote a whole book and the title is My Mother's Stuff, because here's these beautiful antiques. I mean, these furnitures, she didn't have room for them. She didn't want them, but they were family heirlooms from generations. What do you do with those? There are mahogany tables up in New England, the family dining room, these beautiful wood tables, no market for them because people don't eat dinner together very much and don't have many living rooms. So, yeah, stuff does define us, and lack of stuff defines us as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, and how so?
Well, because, for example, if I would die right now, I would be so sorry to whoever has to deal with all my books and all the stuff that's in there. But also by not having things do define us. There are certain pictures and pieces of art, china, that have the memories and are dear, and they serve us as well. I'm not saying, just get rid of everything at all. And those I want to keep. So when you walk in my house, a very different person lives here because of just the way it's furnished and the way it looks, especially with some of my art pieces. I traveled quite a bit in former jobs. So that defines kind of who I am.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have art that I love, so I get it. I mean, that's all very important. And it's interesting, that you can actually build around these kind of things, these kind of furnishings, like you were talking earlier about a chair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And the other important thing with living smaller is having what I call multi-purpose rooms. For example, my office, bedroom, and part of the library is in one room. So, and then I have a dining room that has my grandparents' old oak, a solid oak round table that expands out with two leaves, and I use that. I just had the family over for Easter, so we use it as a dining room. I use it as a little fulfillment table for some of the book sales that we do. I use it for projects, like I put together a cabinet, so that was my workbench. And then I also use it, I put it on rollers so I can move it away, and then I can use that space for an indoor work exercise area, the yoga and TRX and that sort of thing. So having multi-purposes for the different spaces is really helps to make it seem a lot bigger. So I have a lot of my furniture, including the cabinets and the tables, they're on wheels. And so I can easily move them to whatever I need to have them done. And it's so easy to put the wheels on. Even bookcases I have on wheels.
Mm. Well, that makes it easy so everything can kind of move around based on where you need it.
Yeah, and cleaning as well. And different configurations for different situations. For example, if I know I'm having a larger group over to the house, I'll really push the bookcases and the tables just sort of off so to leave an open space for if it's a cocktail party, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that, once people start, living in tiny homes and their family and friends see it, that they want one too?
Well, yeah. There's, because you can do so many different things with them in an art studio, writing cabin, that sort of thing. Probably the most important thing is if you do want a tiny home and it's not allowed in your area, sometimes you can get it by putting it on blocks or skids. And again, don't call it a house. Just call it an outbuilding or an artist studio or a writer's cabin. And oftentimes then it won't be taxed the way a regular house would be. Sometimes they were put on, they'd be taxed as duplexes, which, for example, or they had to have a certain attachment to the house directly. So there are ways to kind of get around it. It's kind of depends on your land and where you live.
Are there any other things that people need to consider, such as, you're talking about the different taxes, or is there anything else they need to consider, when, deciding that they're going to move to a tiny home?
Well, I think furniture is really important because having multi-purpose spaces helps a lot, but also multi-purpose furniture. For example, the trundle beds, where one bed just sort of slides under the other, and that's been used since the Middle Ages. And there are certainly modern ones now that also have various storage with the trundle beds. There are the Murphy beds that pull down from the wall and become a desk, and then you put it back up after you're done sleeping. You've got the bunk beds where you've got the bunk beds over the top and the little desk or study area or whatever it is underneath. And there even are doors that have Murphy doors. You open them up and there's shelving that's big enough for a can, for example, or spices. Then it sort of folds out there. There's a whole chapter in there on the housing, on the furniture, and how you can use them for so many different functions. Like I said, dining tables can become storage places as well. There's one piece of furniture in there that folds out to 5 different uses, from a storage box like a chaise lounge to a chair to something you can lay down on, and what was the other? To a table. I think it was just quite clever, but multi-purpose furniture. Yeah.
That is very clever, and then that way it makes it feel like you have all the comforts that you need, but at the same time you're not having to, have all this stuff there as well.
Yeah. And shelves I've just put shelves everywhere. I mean, I even have, because I have a lot of books, and that's one of the things that I dearly love and value, and I've pared down, but I still probably have 400 to 500 volumes of books. So I have literally shelves above the doors, and that I figured that gave me about an extra 15 lineal square feet of shelf space. I've got shelves all over the place, and it all fits. It works out. So I've even devoted one of the little rooms to being both a pantry and a library, sort of double storage on that. But so it works. I mean, you can just make it work. I also have a washer-dryer, a stacked washer-dryer in my 750 square feet.
Oh. Well, it's got all the comforts. You're not giving up anything other than the clutter and being more independent,
Well, what I've given up is a pretty big mortgage from the house I just sold last year. I've, like you said, the clutter. I've also given up a lot of distractions. I mean, I'm a writer, and I do a lot of seminars and workshops online and around. And for me to be able to sit down and focus and not be distracted by so many different things, including, by the way, I don't watch TV. If I do watch a movie or something, it'll be in the afternoon because I like to get into bed by 9:30, 10 o'clock at the latest. But I get up at 5:30 or 6, and that's when I am my creative best. So having that, be able to just get up and go without the clutter around and the other distractions, it's a whole new life for me in so many levels. I feel like I'm just getting my stride back from when I was from about 15 years ago, because I'm living in a smaller space and able to do more with me and less with stuff.
Yeah. Well, Patricia, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
Where can they connect with me and be part of our community? I'm living in Indiana now. We don't really, which by the way has quite an extended community there. Growing up, I didn't appreciate it, but it's a smaller town in Richmond, Indiana.
Patricia, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Well, I so appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Marianne. And if I can give blessings to anyone, it would be this. May your home fit your lifestyle and enable you to pursue your dreams.
Well, thank you, Pat. It's been an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, A Tiny Home to Call Your Own. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.